supports our nation's response to global pandemics. Negotiations are being held up because of drug policy demands that are completely outside the purview of PAPA. We don't have an agreed-upon process for addressing the SUPPORT Act, which addresses our nation's opioid crisis. We don't have text or even basic agreement on funding levels for the reauthorization of community health centers or the National Health Center Service Corps to help troubling shortages in our nation's healthcare workforce. The chair had announced to Politico a few weeks ago that he's requesting roughly $131 billion for community health centers over 5 years.
What is this going to look like? Well, the Biden plan right now calls for $1,400 for individuals who make up to $75,000 and married couples who make up to $100,000. But Republicans say this needs to be more targeted. It has to go, they say, to the people who need it the most. So they're proposing lowering that amount from $1,400 to $1,000 for anybody making under $40,000. If you make over $50,000, well, under the Republican plan, the checks would disappear completely. Now, we heard from Maryland Republican Congressman Andy.
We finally have some breaking news around the fourth stimulus check, and now they've released a new announcement on the United States economy. Americans are finally ready to see the financial relief at the grocery store and gas stations. But lawmakers are insisting that the government set aside more stimulus for retirees and seniors, and I definitely agree because stimulus payments are necessary. Many lawmakers and economists are looking at Joe Biden's sweeping stimulus package and its impact on the country. The American Rescue Plan Act, which cost a whopping $1.9 trillion, had a slew of provisions tucked into it and help battle the fallout of the crisis and plug holes in the social safety net. One of them is the Lewis Act, and this legislation was meant to shore up the finances of multi-employer pension plans, which are responsible for providing benefits to the retirees. And before the American Rescue Plan was signed into law, many plans were in a financial crisis. Beforehand, the House Education on House Committee and Labor warned that failing plans will enable to help the people who need benefits the most and they're owed to retirees, and that the funding for this program that helped so many Americans was running low. But now, according to the White House, insurance programs are estimated to become insolvent by 2026. It leaves around millions of people without the benefits that they had accrued through their careers. And a White House fact sheet had stated that in the latest cash infusion from the rescue plan, $36 billion went to the Central States Pension Fund, safeguarding 350,000 Teamster workers and retirees, including truck drivers and warehouse workers, from cutting to their benefits. So it's not the only proactive measure that the Biden administration has taken up to shore up American finances when they retire. The president had released a plan to address climate costs, draining retirement funding, and also their savings account. But now the relief in the pension comes to Republicans' potentially eye cuts to security. Social Security, that is, another major social safety net for the elderly and retirees. Social Security is already cash-strapped. So many experts are worried about the future of the program. And also, this Thursday, Chuck Schumer was reelected by his caucus to lead Democrats for a second term. It happened during a private meeting in the Capitol as the caucus chose to keep most of the pre-existing leadership team intact. In the wake of a better-than-expected midterm election, Democrats obtained majority of the House and the Senate. Only Senator Patty Murray of Washington, who will be the president for a while, will not serve on the leadership team anymore, after serving in the number of years, and now it's time for him to retire. But Chuck Schumer, on the other hand, and the rest of the leadership were unanimously elected by the Senate Democratic Caucus to serve again in Congress. The election comes as the party won a slim 2-seat majority over GOP in the 118th Congress, after Warnock held his seat in Congress early this year. This will be the first Congress in which Chuck Schumer will hold the majority again, and where Kamala Harris will be able to step in to break some ties and help Democrats pass the bills they need to pass. For instance, stimulus bills. And also, Democrats re-elected the senators to in top leadership roles, and including Senator Dick Durbin as a majority whip. This year has been defined by the economy as a cycle of record spending, but it appears that record high inflation is not stopping Americans from spending money. But it appears that record high inflation, everybody, has also caused the CEO of JP Morgan Chase to warn that all of this spending is leading to less in Americans' bank accounts. It's a potential sign that a recession might
uncertainty.
The legal aid managing attorney says the economic impact payment system wasn't set up with low-income earners in mind.
It's almost as if it's just occurring to the Treasury and IRS as they go along, that not everybody fits the kind of cookie cutter tax filer with a bank account that they were thinking when they created this.
Local 12 spoke to more than a dozen low-income earners to see whether they have received their stimulus check and a bank account.
So here's the news. The lawmakers are taking huge action this week. Democrats and Republicans are discussing plans that would help cut poverty in half, and states have established new crisis relief programs aiming to provide relief to low income. This comes with extra stimulus cash and extra money in their bank. But now many of the crisis tax benefits from the past 2 years, like the expanded tax credit and temporary expansions to the child and dependent care credit and federal stimulus payments, all ended in 2021. A community refund will be a little bit smaller this year. And some Americans may find themselves owing taxes again. And according to Mark Stebner, a tax expert for Jackson Hewitt, next year a lot of things are put into place for 2021. In some part of 2020 will revert back to its pre-crisis years. It can lead to a refund shock, or even more importantly, balance due shock. In addition, some new regulations were put into place. Student loan forgiveness, for example, is exempt from federal taxation, and borrowers in some states owe taxes. One of the changes is that the standard deduction for 2022 is higher. It's typical for the standard deduction to increase a little each year, along with the rate of inflation, for your 2022 tax return. The standard deduction for single filers has been increased from $12,000 to just $12,950. That's up by $400, and it has bumped by $800 if you're filing married jointly. The standard deduction is what most taxpayers will simply have with a simple tax return in order to claim and reduce their taxable income. Income tax brackets are also higher in 2022. For 2022, income tax brackets were also raised to account for inflation. Your income bracket to how much tax you owe, based on your adjusted gross income, is the money you owe before taxes are taken out. And while the changes were slight, if you're at the bottom of a tax bracket, you may have bumped down to a lower rate for your returns. And while 2021 had a temporary expansion of the tax credit, including eligibility for more dependent credits and offering advance payments, it isn't the case for your 2022 taxes. The child tax credit has already dropped back to its pre-crisis amount, which is $2,000 per child, and now available to people 17 and under. The credit, which was fully refundable last year, is only refundable for a certain amount of people, meaning not everyone gets a stimulus payment this time around. Offering an important note that you can still claim the tax credit in 2022. It may help boost your refund and offset a tax bill. And while federal benefits have decreased, the states are offering child tax credit benefits this year next. The governor of Vermont has signed a tax cut package, and it will send $1,000 to every child 5 and under to Vermont households making $125,000 or less. And with federal stimulus money spending flooding into the states and boosting tax recipients, the Democrat-controlled legislature and Republican governor agreed on something that they're usually at odds over. It's cutting taxes. The House initially sought to spend nearly $50 million. One expert even said the final idea to keep in mind is that their income